The air was heavy inside the abandoned alien outpost. Dust floated in the beams of pale light that broke through broken walls. Every step of the human echoed like a warning, telling him this place was not meant for life anymore. He was a traveler, nothing more, searching for supplies, water, maybe fuel. But what he found was not what he expected. The long halls were silent, too silent. His boots scraped against cracked metal floors, and yet the silence pressed down harder than the sound itself. Then he heard it, faint at first, so faint he thought his mind was playing tricks. A sound not of machines, not of wind, but something softer, something that shook his chest. It was the sound of crying. He stopped, his heart tightening. Crying here meant life, but it also meant danger. He followed the sound, slowly, carefully, his hand resting near the weapon on his belt. The halls grew darker as he moved deeper, shadows wrapping around him like chains. The crying grew clearer, high-pitched, broken, filled with pain. It was the sound of someone small, someone weak. Finally, he reached a rusted door half open. The smell inside was damp and bitter, like metal mixed with old blood. He pushed the door wider, and what he saw made his chest tighten even more. In the corner of the room, behind a cage of bent bars, sat a tiny figure. It was a girl, not human, but alien, her skin pale and marked with bruises, her hair tangled and dirty. Her eyes were wide, shining with tears. She had no clothes, no blanket, no food, nothing but the cold floor beneath her. The human froze. For a long moment he did not move. This was not what he had come for. Yet his heart beat louder, and something inside told him he could not walk away. The girl noticed him, her body shrinking back into the shadows of the cage. Her thin arms wrapped around her knees, trying to make herself smaller. She whispered something in a weak voice, the words broken and hard to understand. But the tone was clear. She was begging him not to hurt her. He stepped forward slowly, raising his hands to show he carried no threat. His voice was low, calm, gentle. "It's all right, I won't harm you," he said. But the girl shook her head, more tears falling. She had heard promises before, promises that ended in pain. The scars on her wrists, the bruises on her arms, they all told the same story. The human's chest grew heavy. What kind of monsters would leave a child like this? Locked away, starved, stripped of dignity. He knelt down before the cage, lowering himself to her level. "I am not like them," he whispered. Still, she hid her face, trembling, her small shoulders shaking. He reached into his pack, slowly pulling out a water flask. He placed it near the bars, pushing it forward just enough so she could see. The girl's eyes flickered toward it, but she did not move. Her lips were dry, her throat clearly burning with thirst. Yet fear kept her frozen. For a long time, they stayed that way. Him waiting, her staring. Then, with a shaking hand, she reached forward. Her fingers brushed the flask, then pulled back quickly, as if expecting pain. But nothing happened. The human only watched, calm and steady. Finally, she grasped it and lifted it to her lips. The sound of water slipping into her mouth was soft, but to him it was louder than thunder. She drank quickly, desperately, until drops spilled down her chin. Then she pushed the flask back, her eyes filled with confusion. Why was this human giving instead of taking? He spoke again, gently. "What is your name?" Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. Then in a whisper, broken and weak, she said, "I have no name." The words pierced his chest sharper than any blade. No name, no identity, nothing but pain and tears. He swallowed hard, fighting the anger rising in him, not at her, but at the ones who had done this. No one deserved to be nameless. He looked at her with steady eyes. "Then I will give you one," he said softly. Her head tilted slightly, confusion mixing with fear. He smiled gently, though his heart ached. "From now on, you are Lyra," he whispered. The girl repeated it, her voice trembling, "Lyra." The sound was small, but it carried warmth. For the first time, something other than fear moved in her eyes. A flicker of hope, A spark. But before the moment could settle, the silence broke. From outside the room, far down the hall, came the sound of footsteps, heavy and cruel. The human stiffened, his body alert. The girl froze, her new hope crushed by terror. She whispered quickly, her voice trembling, "They are back." The human turned toward the door, his hand tightening around the handle of his weapon. His heart pounded, not for himself, but for her. He had found her in a cell of silence, but now the silence was ending. And what came next would decide both of their fates. The footsteps outside grew louder, echoing in the dark hall like drums of danger. The human pressed a finger to his lips, signaling the alien girl to stay quiet. Her body shook, her wide eyes filled with terror. She had heard those footsteps many times before, and each time they brought pain. The heavy sound moved closer, then faded, then returned. It was like a predator circling prey. The human stayed still, his heart pounding but his mind sharp. He waited until the sound drifted further away, then leaned close to the bars. "You are safe for now," he whispered. But the girl shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. Her voice came out broken, filled with fear. "No one is safe, not here." The human frowned, his eyes softening. He wanted to ask her more, but he saw the scars again. Thin lines around her wrists and ankles, marks of chains. Some were fresh, others old, proof that she had been kept here for a long time. Her tiny frame was fragile, her ribs faintly showing under her pale skin. She hugged her knees tightly, as if her small arms could shield her from the world. He lowered his voice, calm, patient. "Who did this to you?" She flinched at the question, as if the words themselves were knives. Her lips trembled, and finally she whispered, "Slavers." The word was heavy, poisoned, and it carried years of pain. Her eyes darted to the door, certain they would come back, certain they always came back. The human clenched his jaw, anger tightening inside him, but he forced his tone to remain steady. "They will not hurt you again," he said. The girl shook her head violently. Her hair fell into her face, her thin shoulders trembling. "They always come back," she whispered. "Always." He wanted to reach out, but the bars separated them like a cruel wall. Instead, he placed his hand on the cold metal, slowly, letting her see his calm. "I am not like them," he said softly. Still, she did not believe, not yet. Trust was a bridge broken too many times for her. The girl buried her face in her knees, her voice muffled. "They promised before," she said. "Promised and lied." His chest grew heavy. He knew she was right. Monsters often wore kind words before they revealed sharp teeth. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "I have no reason to lie," he said. "I only want to help you." The girl peeked up, her red eyes searching his face. For a long time, she said nothing, only looked at him. Her small body trembled, but she did not look away. Something in his eyes was different, something steady, not hunger, not cruelty, only determination. She licked her dry lips, her throat clearly aching for words. "You will leave," she whispered finally. "They all leave." The human's jaw tightened, but his answer was firm. "I will not leave you." The words hung in the air, heavy and powerful. The girl's breath caught, as if she wanted to believe but could not. Her arms tightened around herself. She was trapped not only by metal bars but by chains of fear. The human studied the cage. The lock was rusted but strong. He traced the edges with his fingers, planning. His mind was already searching for ways to break it. But the girl panicked when she saw his focus. "No," she whispered sharply. "Don't, they will hurt you, they will hurt me." Her voice was filled with terror. She crawled back into the darkest corner of the cage, pressing herself against the wall. Her fear was not of the cage breaking, but of what came after. The human's heart twisted. She had been broken so deeply that freedom itself felt like danger to her. He shook his head slowly. "No one owns you," he said softly. "Not anymore." But she shook her head again, her tears flowing freely. "They own everything," she whispered. "They even own my life." He stayed silent for a moment, his mind racing. Then he pulled a small packet of food from his pack, dried rations, plain but edible. He slid it through the gap between the bars, leaving it near her feet. Her eyes flickered toward it, but she did not move. Her stomach growled, a weak, painful sound, but still she hesitated. Her fear was stronger than her hunger. He kept his voice calm, steady. "Eat. No one will punish you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, very slowly, she reached forward. Her small fingers touched the packet. She snatched it back quickly, retreating to the corner, tearing it open. She ate in small bites, fast and desperate, as if someone might rip it away at any second. The human watched silently, his chest heavy. She had been starved not only of food but of kindness. He knew earning her trust would take time, but time was a gift he did not have. The footsteps from earlier still haunted the halls, and he knew the slavers would return. He would need to act soon. But first, he needed her to believe in him at least a little. When she finished the food, her breathing slowed. Her small body leaned against the wall, exhausted. Her eyes closed for a moment, then opened again quickly, afraid to sleep. The human whispered gently, "You are not alone anymore." Her eyes widened slightly, her lips parting as if the words shocked her. For a moment, she simply stared at him, and though fear still chained her heart, there was the smallest flicker of something else. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. The human stayed kneeling by the bars. His hand rested near his weapon, his ears listening for danger. He knew the night ahead would not be silent. He knew the slavers would come back, and when they did, he would be ready. For the girl, still trapped by her fear, still nameless in her own heart, was now his reason to fight, and he would not let the chains of fear hold her forever. The girl sat in the corner of her cage, her eyes red from crying. The human stayed close, his back against the wall, watching her carefully. Neither of them spoke for a while, but the silence was heavy, filled with pain and questions. The outpost groaned with old metal sounds, every echo reminding them that danger was near. At last, the human spoke again, his voice calm and steady. "What is your name?" he asked gently. The girl flinched at the question, as if it was too sharp, too painful. Her lips parted, but no sound came. When she finally whispered, her voice was broken, trembling. "I don't have one." The words cut deeper than any wound. The human blinked, stunned. No name, no identity, nothing to call her by. His chest tightened as he looked at her small figure. A child without a name was like a star without light, forgotten in darkness. He leaned forward, his tone softer now. "Then let me give you one," he said. Her head lifted slowly, her eyes filled with confusion. "You give me," she whispered, as if the thought itself was strange. "Yes," he nodded. "A name is not given by slavers, not by chains, it is given by care." The girl's thin hands clutched at her knees, her body trembling. Her voice cracked. "Why?" The human held her gaze, his eyes steady. "Because you deserve one," he said firmly. "Because you are more than this cage." The girl shook her head, not believing. Her tears slipped down again, her words filled with sorrow. "No one ever cared. No one ever saw me." The human's heart ached. He thought of the countless times she must have begged, cried, screamed, but no one answered. To her, kindness was a lie, hope was a trap, and yet here she was, still alive, still breathing, still fighting in her own small way. He leaned closer, his voice steady. "I see you," he said, "and I will not let them take that from you again." She stared at him, her wide eyes searching his face. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, in a broken whisper, she asked, "What name?" The human thought for a moment. He remembered a flower back on Earth, a small, delicate flower that bloomed even in the coldest valleys. It survived where nothing else could. He smiled softly. Lyra, he said. Your name is Lyra. The girl repeated it softly, her lips trembling. Lyra. The sound was small, fragile, but it carried something new. For the first time, her voice did not sound only broken. It carried a spark of life. Lyra, she whispered again, almost as if she wanted to keep it safe. Her eyes glistened, and her fingers pressed against her chest, as if trying to hold the name inside. The human nodded, his voice gentle. Yes, Lyra, that is who you are now. Not a prisoner, not a number, not nothing. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they were different. Not only tears of pain, but of something she had forgotten long ago, hope. Her lips curved, not into a full smile, but into the shadow of one. And for him that was enough. But the moment was cut short. The floor rumbled, the sound of heavy steps echoing once again in the distance. Lyra froze instantly, panic rushing back into her small frame. She clutched the bars, her wide eyes staring toward the door. They are coming, she whispered in terror. The human placed his hand against the bars, steady and calm. Stay quiet, stay with me, he said firmly. His heart raced, but his voice was steady, because she needed steady more than anything else. The footsteps grew closer, harsh voices speaking in guttural tones. The human couldn't understand all of it, but he knew enough. Slavers were back. Lyra shook her head, tears spilling again. They will hurt us. They always hurt, she whispered. The human's eyes hardened, his jaw set like iron. Not this time, he muttered. He moved quickly, searching the room. His hands brushed over rusted tools, broken crates, scraps of metal. Finally, he found a long piece of iron pipe, heavy and strong enough to break bone. He gripped it tightly, his muscles tense. The footsteps stopped right outside the room. A voice growled, then laughter followed, cruel and sharp. Lyra pressed herself against the cage wall. Shaking, the human moved closer, placing a finger against his lips again. Her breaths were fast and shallow, but she nodded, trying to hold her fear. The door creaked, opening slowly. Light spilled in from the hall, revealing the tall, shadowed forms of the slavers. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, their sharp teeth bared as they stepped inside. The first one looked at the cage, at Lyra, then froze. His eyes narrowed. She has food, he hissed, his voice filled with suspicion. Lyra whimpered, her small body shrinking back. The human stayed in the shadows, hidden for now, his grip on the iron pipe tightening. He knew this was his only chance. The slavers moved closer to the cage, their cruel eyes fixed on Lyra. She held her breath, her small hands shaking. One of them reached for the lock, snarling. The human stepped forward silently, his eyes cold, his heart steady. If he struck now, he could take one down, maybe two. But if he failed, both he and Lyra would pay the price. He glanced once at her, and she whispered his gift of a name, her voice trembling. Lyra. It gave her courage, and it gave him fire. The human's jaw tightened, his grip on the iron pipe firm. He was ready. No matter what came next, he would not let them take her again. The air was thick with danger. The slavers stepped closer to the cage, their cruel eyes glowing in the dim light. Lyra pressed herself back against the corner, her tiny hands gripping the cold bars. Her breaths were short, her chest rising and falling too quickly. The human stood hidden in the shadows, his hand gripping the iron pipe. His heart pounded, not for himself, but for her. One slaver leaned down, snarling. She has food, he hissed again, his clawed hand reaching through the bars. Lyra whimpered, shaking her head quickly, as if begging them not to punish her. The other slaver laughed, his sharp teeth shining. Who gave this to you? He demanded, banging on the bars. Lyra trembled, her lips parting, but no sound came out. Her fear was too strong, her voice too broken. The human's eyes darkened. He knew if he stayed hidden, they would beat her, maybe worse. If he stepped out, the fight would be his. He had no armor, no gun, only the rusted pipe. But he had something they did not. He had the will to protect. The taller slaver reached for the lock, turning it slowly. The sound of metal scraping filled the room. Lyra's heart raced, her tiny body shaking harder. Her wide eyes darted toward the shadows, searching for the human. And then she whispered, so soft, so broken, help me. That was enough. The human lunged from the darkness, his pipe swinging in a wide arc. The iron cracked against the slaver's skull with a sickening thud. The slaver collapsed instantly, crashing to the floor, his claws twitching. The second slaver roared in rage, spinning to face the human. His eyes burned with fury, his sharp teeth flashing. He swung a heavy fist, but the human ducked. The punch slammed into the wall, cracking the metal. The human struck again, the pipe slamming into the slaver's ribs. The alien grunted, staggering back, but he did not fall. Lyra gasped, her eyes wide with shock. She had never seen anyone fight for her, never seen anyone stand between her and the monsters. The human stepped forward, blocking her from view, his body a shield. The slaver lunged again, his claws cutting the air. The human barely dodged, the claws grazing his arm, drawing blood. Pain burned, but he didn't stop. He raised the pipe again and struck with all his strength. The blow landed across the alien's jaw, snapping bone. The slaver fell, choking, and finally went still. Silence filled the room, broken only by Lyra's trembling breaths. The human stood panting, blood dripping from his arm. His hands shook from the force of the fight, but his eyes stayed sharp. He turned to the cage, his voice steady. It's over, he whispered, for now. Lyra's wide eyes stayed fixed on him. Her lips parted, trembling. You fought for me, she whispered, disbelief in every word. The human nodded, his voice low. I told you, you are not alone. He bent to the fallen slaver, pulling free a small blade from the alien's belt. With steady hands, he returned to the cage. The lock was rusted, but the blade was sharp. He jammed it into the mechanism, twisting, forcing, until finally the lock snapped. The door creaked open, freedom spilling into the cell like sunlight. Lyra stared, frozen, unable to believe it. Her hands gripped the bars, not stepping out. She shook her head, whispering, no, if I leave, they will hurt me. They always hurt me. The human crouched in front of her, meeting her frightened eyes. Not anymore, he said firmly. You are free now, and I will keep you free. His words were heavy, a promise forged in blood. Lyra's lips trembled, tears sliding down her cheeks. She looked at him as if trying to see if his words were true. Slowly, with shaking steps, she crawled forward. Her small body passed through the open door, leaving the cage for the first time. Her feet touched the cold floor outside, and she froze. The air felt strange, too wide, too open. But the human reached out, gently draping his cloak over her small shoulders. The fabric swallowed her tiny frame, but it was warm. She clutched it tightly, her tears dripping onto the cloth. You belong with me now, he said softly. Lyra's heart pounded. The cloak smelled of dust, sweat, and something she had never known before, safety. Her small hand clutched the edge. Her lips whispered the word he had given her. Lyra, she said, almost like a prayer. The human nodded, steady. Yes, Lyra. But the silence did not last. The halls outside thundered with more footsteps, heavier this time. The other slavers had heard the fight, and they were coming back. The human's body stiffened, his grip on the blade tight. He looked down at her trembling form, then back at the doorway. Stay close, he whispered. Lyra nodded quickly, her small hand clutching his cloak. The shadows deepened, the outpost shaking with the approach of more enemies. The human took a deep breath, his eyes sharp. The escape had only just begun, and every step forward would be a fight. The hall shook with heavy footsteps. The sound was louder this time, closer, and filled with anger. The human gripped the blade he had taken from the fallen slaver, his eyes sharp and ready. Beside him, Lyra clung to his cloak, her small body trembling, her wide eyes filled with fear. The human bent down slightly, his voice steady but urgent. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Lyra nodded quickly, her lips pressed tight, her tiny hand refusing to let go of his cloak. She had no weapon, no strength, but she had him, and for the first time in her life, she dared to hope he might protect her. The door burst open with a loud crash. 3 slavers stormed in, their cruel eyes glowing in the dim light. They froze when they saw the cage broken, the child free, and their comrades lying on the floor. One snarled, his teeth sharp, his claws curling. "Who did this?" he hissed. The human stepped forward, blade in hand, his body tense but unshaken. "I did," he said, his voice calm and cold. The slavers roared in fury, their voices echoing through the ruined walls. One charged, claws raised, his body moving like a beast. The human waited, his heart steady, his focus sharp. At the last moment, he sidestepped, swinging the blade across the alien's arm. Blood sprayed, the slaver howled, crashing into the wall. The second one lunged, larger, faster, his claws aiming for the human's chest. The human lifted the blade, blocking the strike, sparks flying as metal scraped against claw. The force pushed him back, his boots sliding across the floor, but he held firm, his arms burning with the effort. Lyra gasped, her small voice breaking. "Please," she whispered, though no one could hear her over the noise. Her eyes filled with tears as she watched him fight. Every strike, every dodge, every sound of metal against claw made her heart race. But the human did not falter. He ducked under another swipe, driving the blade into the slaver's side. The alien screamed, staggering back, his claws dripping with his own blood. The third slaver circled, his cruel eyes fixed on Lyra. He grinned, sharp teeth flashing. "Little one," he hissed, "you cannot hide." Lyra froze, her small body shaking. The human's eyes snapped to him instantly. "No," he growled, his voice filled with iron. He moved quickly, placing himself between Lyra and the slaver. The alien roared in anger, charging at them both. The human braced, gripping the blade with both hands. At the last second, he struck upward, the blade slicing across the alien's chest. The slaver fell back with a scream, his body crashing into the broken cages. Breathing hard, the human stood tall, his eyes scanning the room. 2 slavers writhed on the ground, wounded but alive. The third lay unconscious near the wall. It was not over, but for now they had survived. Lyra clutched the cloak tighter, her tears streaming. She whispered softly, her voice trembling but clear, "You fight for me." The human turned, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "Yes," he said simply, "I fight for you." Her small hands pressed against her chest, her heart pounding. No one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever stood between her and pain. Her voice cracked, but she whispered again, "Why?" The human's eyes softened, though his grip on the blade stayed tight. "Because you deserve to live free," he said. "Because you deserve more than chains." The moment was fragile, filled with emotions too big for words, but it ended quickly. The walls shook again, louder this time. Voices echoed down the hall, more slavers shouting, calling out in anger. The fight had drawn attention, and more were coming. The human's face hardened, his mind racing. He could not fight an army, not with only a blade. They had to escape now. He grabbed Lyra's small hand, pulling her gently but firmly. "Stay with me," he said. She nodded, her legs weak but moving. Together, they slipped into the dark hallway, leaving the broken room behind. The air was filled with echoes, the shouts of slavers hunting them. The human led quickly, every step careful, every sound a risk. Lyra clung to his side, her breaths fast, her eyes darting to every shadow. They moved through narrow corridors, broken walls, and collapsed ceilings. The outpost was a maze of rust and ruin, perfect for hiding but dangerous for escape. At one corner, the human stopped suddenly, pulling Lyra close. Two slavers marched past, their weapons glowing faintly, their voices cruel. Lyra buried her face in his cloak, holding her breath. The human stayed still as stone, his grip on the blade steady. The slavers passed without seeing them, their voices fading into the distance. He exhaled slowly, his heart pounding. They were safe for now. But every step forward was a risk, every shadow a threat. Lyra's small voice whispered, trembling but brave, Will we make it out? The human looked down at her, his eyes steady. Yes, he said firmly. I will not let them take you again. The promise hung in the dark. For Lyra, it was a light in the endless shadows. For the human, it was a vow stronger than chains. They were not free yet, but together, step by step, they were fighting for it. And no matter how many slavers came, he would not stop, because this was no longer just a rescue. This was a fight for her freedom, and for his promise. The halls were dark and endless. Every shadow looked alive. Every sound felt like a warning. The human moved carefully, blade in hand, his eyes sharp. Beside him, Lyra clung tightly to his cloak, her small feet stumbling but determined to keep up. Her breaths were shallow, her face pale. She was weak, too weak, yet she refused to let go of him. The human slowed his pace, steadying her with one hand. You are safe, he whispered softly, just stay close to me. Lyra nodded, but her wide eyes still trembled with fear. Her voice was fragile, almost too quiet to hear. They always find me, she whispered. They never stop. The human looked down at her, his chest heavy. He wanted to promise her safety, to promise her peace. But he knew the slavers were still searching. He could hear their distant voices echoing through the halls, cruel and hungry. Still, he tightened his grip on the blade and whispered firmly, Not this time, Lyra, not while I am here. They turned a corner and found a small room, half collapsed. The human pushed her inside gently, closing the broken door behind them. The space was quiet, filled with dust and broken crates. He lowered himself to the floor, guiding Lyra to sit. She collapsed against the wall, exhausted. Her thin arms wrapped around herself as she shivered. The human pulled off his cloak and draped it around her shoulders again. It swallowed her tiny body, but it warmed her trembling frame. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Only the faint sound of her breathing filled the air. Then, softly, she spoke, her voice breaking. Why do you help me? The human looked at her, his eyes calm but steady. Because no one else did, he said. Because you should not have been left here to die. Her lips trembled, and her tears fell again. No one ever said that, she whispered. No one ever cared. The human's chest ached, his hands tightening around the blade. He wanted to tell her more, but words felt too small for the truth. Instead, he reached forward slowly, gently wiping the tears from her cheeks. Her eyes widened at his touch. She did not pull away, not this time. She only stared at him, her breath trembling. Don't leave me, she whispered suddenly, her voice desperate. Her small hand reached out, clutching his sleeve with surprising strength. The human froze, then nodded firmly. I will not leave you, he said, his voice steady. I promise. That promise broke something inside her. More tears spilled from her eyes, but these tears were different. They were not only tears of fear, but tears of release. Tears that carried years of pain and loneliness. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his arm, her small body shaking with quiet sobs. The human did not move away. He let her cry, let her break, let her release what had been trapped inside her for too long. His hand rested gently on her back, steady and protective. In that moment, the bond was formed. Not with chains, not with fear, but with kindness. Lyra clung to him as if he were her last light. And for the first time in her life, she believed that maybe she was not worthless. Maybe someone could see her as more than a prisoner, as more than nothing. The human looked at her and spoke softly. You are not alone anymore, Lyra, not ever again. Her small voice answered between sobs. Promise. He nodded, his voice firm. Promise. The quiet moment gave her strength. Her tears slowed, her breathing steadied. For the first time since he had found her, she closed her eyes. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. She leaned against his side, small and fragile. The human stayed still, watching the door, guarding her. He listened to the distant shouts of slavers searching. But he did not move. His promise to her was stronger than the fear. Suddenly, the ground shook. A loud roar echoed through the outpost. Lyra's eyes snapped open, fear flooding her face again. She clutched his cloak, whispering in panic. They are back. Their ship. They always come back. The human rose quickly, pulling her up with him. He could feel the vibration in the floor, the tremor of engines. The slavers had returned with more strength. Their ship had landed nearby, and soon the whole place would be crawling with enemies. Lyra's tears threatened to fall again. Her body trembled, her voice broke. They will take me again. The human crouched, gripping her shoulders firmly. His eyes locked with hers, steady, unshaken. No, he said, his voice like iron. They will not take you, not while I still breathe. Her heart pounded at his words. Her tears fell once more, but she nodded quickly. Her small voice whispered, "Then I will stay with you." He gave her a sharp nod, lifting her into his arms. She was light, too light, a sign of hunger and suffering. But she clung to him, her head pressing against his chest. Her tears wetting his shirt as she whispered again and again, "Don't let them take me." He held her tighter, his jaw clenched. "I will not," he said, his voice unshakable. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was now forged in fire, in tears, and in promise. The walls shook again. Footsteps thundered outside. The human shifted her in his arms, his blade ready in the other hand. The fight was not over. It was only beginning. But now, he was no longer fighting alone. Now, he was fighting for someone who had given him purpose. And for Lyra, every tear shed had turned into strength. Because now, she was not just a nameless prisoner. She was Lyra, and she belonged to someone who would never let her go. The ground shook harder as the slaver's ship landed outside. The walls rattled, dust falling from the cracked ceiling. Lyra buried her face against the human's chest, her body trembling with fear. "They are here," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They will take me again." The human held her tighter, his blade gleaming in the faint light. "No," he said firmly, his voice like steel. "They will not take you, not while I stand." His eyes were sharp, but his heart was heavy. He knew the fight ahead was almost impossible, one man against many, yet he refused to let fear break his promise. The sound of heavy boots thundered through the outpost. Dozens of voices shouted orders, their cruel tones echoing. The slavers were searching, sweeping the halls, hunting for the lost child. The human moved quickly, carrying Lyra down the corridor. Every step was careful, every turn dangerous. He knew one mistake could cost them both. Lyra clung to him, her tears hot against his shirt. Her small voice whispered again and again, "Don't leave me. Don't let them take me." Each word struck his heart like a hammer. He looked down at her, his grip firm. "I will never leave you," he said, his voice calm but unshakable. "I swear it." They slipped into another broken room. The human lowered Lyra to the ground, crouching to her level. Her wide eyes met his, full of fear and doubt. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and strong. "Listen to me," he said softly. "You are free now, no matter what happens. No one owns you anymore." Her lips trembled, her tears falling again. "I am still afraid," she whispered. He gave her a small nod, his voice firm. "Fear is not weakness. It means you are still alive, and I will protect that life." Suddenly, the door burst open. 3 slavers stormed in, their weapons raised, their eyes burning with rage. "There she is," one snarled, pointing at Lyra. The human stepped in front of her instantly, his body a wall between her and the monsters. His blade lifted, his eyes filled with fire. "She is mine now," he growled, his voice shaking the room. The slavers laughed cruelly, their sharp teeth flashing. "A human thinks he can claim what belongs to us," one mocked, but the human did not move, his stance firm. "She belongs to no one but herself," he said, his words like thunder. The slavers lunged, the fight exploding in chaos. The human swung his blade, striking the first across the chest. Blood sprayed as the alien fell back with a scream. The second slaver charged, claws slashing. The human dodged, countering with a sharp strike to the leg. The alien roared, stumbling, his weapon dropping to the ground. The third one aimed straight for Lyra, his hand outstretched to grab her. Her scream pierced the air. But before he could touch her, the human tackled him, slamming him to the floor. The blade cut across his throat, silence ending his roar. Breathing hard, the human stood tall again. Blood dripped from his arm, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Yet his eyes stayed sharp, unbroken. Lyra's small body shook as she crawled forward. Her hands clutched at his cloak, her tears falling fast. "You fight for me every time," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. He looked at her, his face softening. "Yes," he said, his tone calm, "and I always will." The walls shook again, louder than before. This time it was not footsteps but the sound of engines powering up. The slavers' ship outside was preparing to lift off, but not without their prize. Voices echoed through the halls, dozens, maybe more. They were coming, all of them. The human's heart pounded, but he did not let fear touch his face. He looked down at Lyra, who clung to him desperately. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Her lips trembled, but she nodded quickly. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." Those words gave him strength. He lifted her into his arms once more. Her tiny frame pressed against his chest, her tears wetting his shirt. The human turned toward the exit, his blade ready. The roar of slavers filled the halls, but his promise echoed louder in his heart. He would not let them win. Not while she lived, not while he could fight. They reached the main corridor, the way out, but it was blocked, dozens of slavers standing in their path. Their eyes glowed with cruelty, their weapons raised. The leader stepped forward, his voice sharp and mocking. "You cannot win, human. Give her back. She belongs to us." The human stepped forward, his arms tightening around Lyra. "No," he said, his voice strong and steady. "She belongs to herself, and I promised her freedom." The leader snarled, his claws raised. "Then you will die with her," he hissed. The human's eyes did not waver, his blade firm in his hand. "If that is what it takes," he said coldly, "but I will never break my promise." Lyra's small voice broke through the noise, her arms wrapped tight around his neck, her tears falling. "You are my hero," she whispered. The human's heart surged with strength, his fear burning into fire. He stood tall, one man against many, and in that moment he was not only a human. He was her protector, her shield, her promise. The slavers roared, the battle ready to begin, but the human did not step back. He stepped forward, blade raised, his promise burning brighter than the darkness around him, because even if the whole galaxy stood against him, he would fight, not for glory, not for power, but for her, for Lyra, the girl who had nothing left but her tears, and for the promise he had made, to never let her be taken again.